All right, let's talk about the movie that has everybody buzzing. I mean, people are talking, they're crying, they're arguing. We are diving deep into the phenomenon that is Hamnet. So this thing is just a powerhouse, right? It's already snagging awards left and right, and you can practically hear the Oscar buzz getting louder. And at first glance, you think, okay, I get it. It's a fancy, well-made movie about Shakespeare. You know the type. But here's the thing. The movie's biggest secret is that it's not really about him at all. And that twist, that's what's turned this whole thing into a massive cultural debate. Okay, so why is everyone talking about Hamnet? Let's get right into it, because the reaction has been, well, just overwhelming. This is so much more than just a film. It's become this huge conversation starter about art and grief and history, and it's all because people are having such a powerful emotional reaction to it. I mean, listen to how critics are talking about it. They're not just saying it's good. Christy Puchko over at Mashable says it could leave you tear-soaked and in tatters. Wow, that's not just a movie night, right? That's an experience. And it isn't just the professional critics either. You look online, and everyday viewers are having these incredibly profound reactions. I saw one Reddit user call the third act actual cinema nirvana. Can you imagine? They said it was the most cathartic experience they'd had in a theater, maybe ever. You see this kind of phrase pop up again and again. The Washington Post called it a beautifully crafted punch to the gut. So you've got tatters, nirvana, a punch to the gut. It's clear this movie isn't just telling you a story, it's making you feel it, big time. And all this emotional hype, it's not just hype. It's backed up by the numbers. We're talking an 88% certified fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes, and that's from over 130 reviews. So this isn't some small indie darling. There's a real, widespread agreement here that this film is something special. Yeah, the numbers really just seal the deal. Whether it's regular folks, top critics, Metacritic, it's a home run. So what is this story? What's at the core of this movie that's making everyone feel so much? Well, here's the big move. The film gets all its power by doing something pretty radical. It basically shoves William Shakespeare, the guy whose name is on everything, to the side, so it can tell the story of his wife. So let's talk about the historical Anne Hathaway. The truth is, we know almost nothing about her. Seriously, the facts are few and far between. She was 8 years older than Shakespeare, she was pregnant when they got married, they had 3 kids, and oh yeah, he famously left her the second best bed in his will. That's about it. She's basically a historical blank canvas. And for centuries, historians kind of filled in those blanks by painting her as this boring, uneducated countrywoman who was a drag on her genius husband. So the film takes that blank canvas and just paints this incredibly vivid, totally new portrait. First off, they don't even call her Anne. They call her Agnes, based on a name in her father's will, which immediately gives her a whole new identity. And she's not some quiet housewife, no way. They imagine her as this force of nature, a gifted healer, almost mystical, with a pet hawk and this deep, powerful connection to the natural world. And this new version of Agnes, this powerful woman, she's right at the heart of the film's biggest and, let's be honest, most controversial idea, that there's a straight line connecting a horrible family tragedy directly to one of the greatest plays ever written. Let's call it the Hamnet hypothesis. Here's the theory in a nutshell. When Shakespeare's only son, Hamnet, died at just 11 years old, that single event became the direct inspiration for his masterpiece, Hamlet. And this isn't just a wild guess, because back then, in the 16th century, the names Hamnet and Hamlet, they were basically the same name. People use them interchangeably. And when you look at the timeline, it's really compelling. The boy, Hamnet, dies in 1596. Then, just a few years later, around 1600, boom, the play Hamlet appears. The film grabs onto that connection and builds its entire emotional story around it. It's an incredibly powerful idea. But is it true? And that's where the story gets a whole lot more complicated. Because while audiences are, grabbing for the tissues, a lot of actual Shakespeare scholars are raising their hands and saying, hold on a minute. The main criticism you hear from academics is that the film is biographically reductionist. That sounds fancy, but what it really means is that the movie takes this super complex work of art. I mean, Hamlet is about revenge, politics, philosophy, madness, and it boils it all down to one single, simple cause, a sad thing that happened at home. Okay, so let's break down what the scholars are saying. First, the origin of the play, Hamlet.
They point out it wasn't created out of thin air. It was part of a popular genre at the time, the revenge tragedy, and it was probably a remake of an older play. It wasn't just about a son. Then there's the character of Agnes. Critics say she feels a lot more like a modern 21st century ideal, this kind of mystical eco-feminist, than a real woman from the 1500s. And finally, Shakespeare himself. In the movie, he's kind of passive and distant, but historians say the real guy was a driven, super smart, ambitious businessman who was crushing it in the cutthroat London theater scene.
So you've got this tension, right? The emotional story that we want to be true versus what the historical record actually suggests. And that really gets to a much bigger question. If the film isn't 100% accurate history, then what is it? What are we actually looking for when we tell these kinds of stories about the past? You know, the author of the book the movie is based on, Maggie O'Farrell, she actually gives us the perfect answer. She said the story came from questions that history can't answer. Like, why did Shakespeare name his greatest character after his dead son? And maybe most importantly, how did his wife feel about it? The film, like the book, is trying to fill in those silent gaps with emotional truth. It's about imagining the very real human feelings behind the dry facts.
So in the end, maybe Hamnet isn't really a story about the 16th century at all. Maybe it's a story about us here in the 21st century. It's about our deep need to believe that behind every great work of art, there's a personal, relatable human story of love and loss. Which leaves us with one last big question to think about. When we rewrite history to fill in the blanks, whose story are we really writing?